We get started. Paul, introduce yourself.
Yep, okay. Paul Watson, OnInit, based out in Kansas City, as you can tell by the accent. I've been over here about 16, 17 years now. Contact details are on the screen there. I have no problems with people contacting me directly. If you've got a down system or anything like that, I don't have any problems you contacting me in the middle of my night. It just doesn't bother me. I formed OnInit in the UK, 1999-ish. Doug's on the call, he might be able to confirm that. Moved out to the US, like I said, about 17 years ago. Tend to specialize in enterprise replication and time series. My bread and butter is really looking after systems that are no longer supported. So what we're going to talk about today is Informix and OneDB. It's not going to be a particularly long presentation. We'll touch a little bit on the background, some compatibility slides, and some differences between the two products. I'm not going to get into licensing or costs or what is best in which situation, etc., etc. And these are purely my personal observations using both products over the last few years. The main thing to notice is these products are not interchangeable. Okay, they are interoperable, and by interchangeable I mean you can't just spin up an Informix engine and then throw the OneDB binaries at it and expect it to work, and vice versa. So they are two distinct products, but they will quite happily play with each other. They get on well. They're not like siblings that bicker sometimes, but generally they get on very, very well. So you cannot just move between the two without consequences. Think of it more like whichever direction you go, from Informix to OneDB or OneDB back, you've got the same sort of issues you would have in any sort of major release migration that you'd see within just the Informix brand or even within the OneDB brand. I work with both IBM, I work with HCL. I think both companies are great to work with for the most part, but at a pure business level, which product you choose is really down to you and your internal team to work out what is more appropriate in your environment. Like I said, I don't really want to get involved in which is better, which is worse in any particular business application. We all know and love IBM, so I'm not going to really chat about them very much. This is a bit of the background of how HCL and OneDB came to be, and this is my understanding of what happened. So back in 2016, 2018, HCL launched a partnership with IBM, HCL, signed lots of deals, strategic partnership, etc., and they released Q2 2017, Informix 12.10 and 14.10. The first standalone product, what I would call a standalone product, OneDB, was released in 2019. 2021, 2023, HCL completed their acquisition of Action. I don't know how many of you know Action, but Action is effectively, logically, the old Ingress database of old. We got OneDB v2 released earlier this year. Well, the actual latest drop was this year, and we are supposed to be getting OneDB v3 dropped next Q1 2024, and I believe we'll get Informix 15.10 or 14.5 or whatever number it's going to be dropped about the same time. Now we do have a commitment from OneDB that they will always ensure that OneDB is 100% compatible with IBM and making it a superset. So this should be a complete functional equivalence as of the next drop, which is, like I said, version 3 or IDS 15.10. I believe it's 15.10 at the moment. I should have said early on, if anybody wants to ask any questions, just put them in. There's a chat and Art will interrupt me if I need to be interrupted, etc., etc. So how compatible are the two products? We all know the sysdb info command. So if we run a sysdb info on the version, we will generally, or we will get OneDB server 14.10 FC4 being reported back. The absolute latest I've got installed at a 1DB level is 2013, and that reports at an Informix level FC4 EE. I honestly don't know where the FC4 SE or EE have come from. So I just don't know. Now, if you want to investigate or know what version of 1DB you're running, instead of using the version option, you can just use 1DB and it will give you the underpinning 1DB version. So because we have this, sorry, the comms dropped there slightly. Because we have this 1DB is always reporting FC4, it is tricky to work out what the logical equivalent is from the other side. Looking at the compatibility chart or looking at the release notes from the IBM website, we see for FC7 examples on check -W, on stat manage GTPF, mirroring is always turned on, improvements in the read ahead, notifications and write back. Those are all there in the absolute latest version of 1DB, but it still reports an FC4. And because we don't really know what or I haven't worked out how to compare at a Informix FC level to what we've got in 1DB, sometimes it makes the migrations a little challenging. You think you're moving forward in time where logically you're not moving forward in time, you're trying to actually go back a release. So that can make some of the upgrades a little challenging, or migrations a little challenging. Pain points, really, there aren't any, which is not quite true. They're all to do with the install. If you remember back in the days when IBM decided in their infinite wisdom to change the simple tar extract into the Java-based installer, an old pain we had at the time, making sure we had the correct JVMs and Java installed. I mean, we are going back a while, but we have a lot of the similar sort of pain points at the moment with 1DB. And back in the day, it always made me laugh, the fact that to install an Informix database, we had to go to an Oracle website to download a version of Java. It still makes me laugh. I tried to find a 1DB install that was failing with missing stuff, so I could have some slides up here. I just don't have one. I thought I had one in my notes. But generally, the 1DB install, a bit like Informix, is when you do the installation, it will complain about missing libraries, missing packages, which you're just going to have to download. You will have to probably link some of the shared libraries, so libcursors 7 to libcursors 6, things like that. All the things you know and love and hate having to do at the moment, you will have to just do under the 1DB install.
Paul has a question about launching 1DB against existing storage.
You mean existing Informix storage?
Yeah.
Yeah. Subject to you going forward in time, then it will just migrate an upgrade as if you were doing in-place Informix upgrade. So if you went from Informix 12 to 1DB, that will just migrate straight forward. If you are on Informix, something like FC10, and try to install 1DB1, that will not work because you're actually moving back in time. That's what I was saying earlier. It's difficult to work out the compatibility matrix between the two products. Or I found it very difficult to actually come up with a hard and fast. But if you migrate 14 to 1DB, early 14 to 1DB or 12 to 1DB, you have all the same sort of problems you would get with an in-place migration purely within the Informix brand. And if you have a 1DB1 and you try to move that to an Informix FC10, 1410 FC10, it will go forward. You'll have all the normal partition header changes type things that we all know and love. So you can move between them. It's just a little tricky sometimes with the compatibility. The first one I did a long time ago, I think I went from FC6 to 1DB1. It just started. It didn't change anything. I took down 1DB, switched the binaries back to Informix, and Informix 14 FC6. Don't hold me on the exact version, but that just started without any problems whatsoever. So it would just work. What will not work, which is what you'd expect, is if you take a Informix on tape, even though the binaries will start, and try and run that into an 1DB on tape, it will come back and say you have a version mismatch. Similarly, if you try to replicate using HDR technologies, so HDR, RSS, etc., into the other product, it will complain saying, don't be so stupid. So, like I said, as long as you're in the same releases, you're absolutely fine for HDR, RSS. We got a bit of an echo, Art? Or is that just my end?
Yeah, please mute yourselves.
So hopefully that will answer the question. Like I said, when you moving from one to the other, the biggest thing is whether you're actually moving forward in time or not. And the last one we did, the major time was taken not converting any of the data. We just had a lot of databases, and the upgrade process or migration process is more numbers of databases dependent as opposed to volume of data. Okay, just coming back to the slide deck though. So the install, you tend to have problems around the JDK, missing libraries, which it will try and tell you. Sometimes it says a library is missing when it's actually there. The last time I had to raise a call to find it, and then next time I just ran an strace and it told me what it was really missing. Coming back to the Java thing, the install client I did the other day, it needed JDK Java 1.8. I had lots of Javas on the box, but I got it working with 1.8. Whether it will continue working with 1.8 on the next release, I don't know. Like I said, you might end up having to soft link some libraries together. The one thing I do think you want to make sure you install is the OpenSSL compatibility layer. You will probably need that. Now, from the environment point of view, life is incredibly simple. We have your three major Informix variables: dir, server, and SQL host. We have the same thing under 1DB. If you've got a common entry point to your environment, all I do anyway, I just edit my default profile that everybody who needs to access Informix gets. I make one change in one place, and I just set 1DB variable to the equivalent of the Informix variables, and that's it. I don't need to do anything else. If you had an environment where everyone's got their own personal profile, or you're out people are scattered and can control it, yes, that could be a pain point for you. But if you've got a managed environment, you shouldn't see any issues whatsoever. Oops, sorry, jumped too far ahead. The licensing is different. Now, Informix, you have lots of versions, lots of options. They're controlled by the jar file that you'll download either from PA or wherever you get it from. So we have workgroup, advanced workgroup, enterprise, advanced development, etc., etc. None of that lot exists under OneDB. You have full enterprise version across the board. There isn't a concept of a development license or an enterprise license or a workgroup license. The OneDB license tends to be, well, it is CPU VP based. So if you've got a 64 CPU machine and you only want to spin up 4 for Informix, you would buy a 4 CPU VP license. As opposed to under the Informix rule, you would buy something for that machine and you can run as many VPs as you feel that you want to. And again, it will come back to what you need to do in your environment. The licenses are controlled by a license portal. The initial licensing model for OneDB was SaaS-based, so term-based licensing. So you would, via either your partner or OneDB or whoever, you would get a magic key that would limit that server to however many CPUs you want to use. So you download, we call them devices. You'd create a device for 8 CPUs, and then we would, from the HCL Flex website, we would swatch out what I've got there as magic key to whatever 8 or 10 digit variables you've configured. And when the engines start, it will go out and make sure that you have the correct licenses installed. It won't allow you to run more than you're allowed to, basically. I said there was they only do the full enterprise edition in Informix speak. It doesn't include IWA. Last thing I heard, the IWA option is more likely to be based around the Actian Avalanche product, but I wouldn't swear to that. That's just what I've been told and that's what I've heard. Now, if your server doesn't have access to the outside world for whatever reason, you can actually spin up your own internal server. I don't know if you remember back to the bad old days of Solaris and Solaris compilers and things like that. We'd have a Flex server there, and when you spin up the compiler, it would make sure that you weren't going over your license, but it was all controlled internally. Again, I've been told that we're moving away from a FlexNet-based license server to another product, which is a godsend because FlexNet is awful. But so you have this license server. That's probably one of the main variables changing. And then, as per IBM, we have the same licensing models, term and perpetual. I think initially, and again, don't hold me to this, that OneDB initially was only going to do term licenses and IBM only really had perpetual licenses, but the world has moved on in the last 5 years and you can get term and perpetual on both of them now. The same rules apply for anything to do with active standby, so HDR, RSS, etc. There's no licensing fees on either side as long as you're not actively using them for real work. Now, one of the questions I do get is support. Support is easy. You go to a different website, you call a different number, but you'll end up speaking to some of the people that are on this call now. I can see some of the people there. Yeah, so you'll get the same person at the end of the day. You just have to go in via a different access point. So again, if you went down that route, you would have to go to an HCL website. Now, in my world, I look after a lot of Informix customers, so my IBM account allows me to access all of their PMR history, etc. under the OneDB world, I tend to, I haven't tried doing that yet because I have set up and configured the software. So they're still under my OneDB account, so that I don't have separate customers. So I don't know how the website would cope in that arena or that situation. But most of the people, I suspect, you have one IBM account that you need to worry about. So it's probably not going to be a big deal for most people. Sorry, I'm seeing some chats coming through. Is anything there?
Yeah, just general questions that I can answer here. Nothing specific.
One of the early slides, I said that we are not interchangeable, but we are interoperable. So enterprise replication, 100% definitely works. I've had no issues with it whatsoever. I've got a slide in a moment that'll show that. Connection manager, honestly, I don't know. I don't have connection manager deployed. I think it will probably work. My only concern would be the SSL layer and older versions, whether you're using a GSK or using OpenSL. I don't know for fact that will work or not work. My gut feel would be yes, with the proviso of the SSL. ODBC, JDBC, just work. It just doesn't care. So you can take your ODBC layer and your Informix client and talk to OneDB, or you can take your OneDB client and talk back to an Informix database. How officially supported that is, honestly, I don't know. I suspect it's not, but they will the connectivity will work. The equivalent in the OneDB world for Informix HQ is OneDB Explorer. It's the same sort of general product with a different UI on it. And the last time I tried to load it, writing some exam material, I actually found out the OneDB Explorer currently has a bug in it, and you can only put your repository into an Informix database, which made me smile. But again, you pay your money, you take your choice. Both will talk to each other, and you can control both of them from the same UI if you wish to. Enterprise at rest. The comment earlier about storage, I haven't seen any issues, so I've got that down as a yes. As long as you move the correct key files over, it should just start, and in my world, it has always just started. Okay. The SSL there, I've got, depends, it really depends on what you're using for your keys, GSK or SSL. I haven't done an awful lot of work in this. I'm not expecting any major problems, but they use obviously OpenSL and GSK use a different file format, which I struggled to get my head around initially, but it does appear to work. My concern would really be if you're working in a mixed GSK OpenSSL environment. I don't know how that would work. So can you connect your 4GL and ESQL apps to OneDB? Yeah, absolutely no problems whatsoever. But if you don't recompile them, you're going to have to make sure that you're using the correct client layer. So if you've got a 4GL with CSDK, ESQL 4.10, you have to make sure that environment is available for you on how you've done your deployment. ESQL, I have no problems with. You just recompile with a CSDK relevant to OneDB. It will just connect. I have got 4GL apps connecting to OneDB, but I haven't tried recompiling 4GL with a OneDB SDK. So in my world, the 4GL is still living purely in an Informix world, but it will quite happily chatter away to a normal OneDB. CDC definitely works, using that a lot these days. Again, you've got the same gotcha. If you are talking to OneDB, you need to compile it with a OneDB CSDK. If you're talking to Informix, you need to compile it with the Informix one. That all being said, I'm 99% certain I've got it working against both regardless. I have to look back at my notes.
Yeah, Paul, the main thing is which libraries are available to the compiled code, or if
Yeah.
it's compiled static. So if you compile
Yes.
if you compile with OneDB's compilers, you need to have access to the OneDB libraries, but both apps will talk to Informix or OneDB
Correct. Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah, it's more of a deployment and how you wanted to do the deployment. Third-party tools, the ones I've looked at haven't had a problem. I mean, the one I'm thinking about particularly is Service Studio, which I use quite a lot. When you connect using Service Studio, it will tell you you're connecting to Informix FC4, which I know I'm not. I'm connecting to OneDB latest. I don't know what AGS are going to do about that. Things like Squirrel, DB Visualizer and things like that. The ones I have tried, I haven't had any real problems with. They seem to connect with the standard JDBC layer. I have not tried changing the JDBC layer to the OneDB. So those products, the client layer still works quite happily. Talking about interoperability, this is from one of our systems that we play with. So it's a 4-node ER system, and we've got OneDB, we've got Informix 14, 11, 11.7, and 12, all working in an ER environment, and they just don't care. They just seem to work. I always remember being told by Madison back in the dark ages that you always want to control your CDR from the latest version possible. And that gets a little tricky. Like I said, can't easily find a way to work out if I was using OneDB 2010 and Informix 14.10.8, which one really is the latest version. But as CDC is just, CDR is just an app. You could pick whichever one you want and move it to whichever machine you want. Not officially supported, but it does work. We had an issue with a migration. Replication is running under 12.10 across the board. We hit a bug with replication, and we ended up using a 14.10 CDR binary to fix the problem. The only major difference I've found is on the REST APIs, and I don't know how many people use it. The Informix one, when you're trying to do searching, is more GET-based, where the OneDB one is more post-based. My personal opinion is posting in a JSON doc, you have a greater control and greater flexibility on formatting that document to get back what you need. If you want to migrate between the Informix REST APIs and the OneDB REST APIs, that could be a fairly major lift for some companies because the syntax is completely different. I found out when I was doing this and I was getting Grafana to talk to Informix and Grafana to talk to OneDB. The Grafana plugin has to be completely different. Now, whether you could use the same plugin against, so I could use the Informix REST API to talk to a OneDB database. I believe it should work, but I know it's not officially supported. I don't know whether they're going to merge those two APIs together or not. So I said it was always going to be a bit of a short presentation, which it's turned out to be. The takeaway, as far as I'm concerned, is these two products are not interchangeable. You can't just chop and change at will. You need to consider your environment you want to work in, etc., etc. But the two products will play very, very nicely together. Do everything you know and love in both environments. So all I've got now is questions. Are there any? Deafened by the silence.
Well, now, if you pull up the chat, you can see the questions that were out there. But was somebody going to say something?
I just want to ask a question about Informix issue, but I think I can do that on the forum a lot better. But I was a little confused about some of the issues. Well, obviously, this is Jacob. I've been out of the Informix world for a little too long, so some of the stuff has gone past my left ear, unfortunately. I keep trying to fight my way back into it with my own server. But for Informix HQ, is that just like there's a server sitting on sitting on my when I'm running Informix on my Linux box?
Yeah, Informix HQ is the UI that talks to a repository at the back end, and that repository is in whatever system you want it to be. And then after that, that's the server element, and then you've got at the client end, so a machine you're monitoring, we have an agent. So you would deploy the server, and it's up to you how you deploy the agent, either directly from the server that you're controlling, or you can do it via the UI. It's the old replacement for OAT or ISA or whatever we've had over the years. And then OneDB have an equivalent. It's a different UI, gives us much the same sort of information. So it's a Java-based product.
I don't think I'll be downloading OneDB to my Linux box. Because I won't be able to license it. Won't be able to use it often enough to be able to see how it pays off. Okay.
Yeah, I don't really want to get into the licensing stuff and what isn't available. If you ping me offline, I can describe a few options.
I'll probably post a question on the forum. That's I get very good answers there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going back on mute.
So I can't find the chat.
It's on the bottom right. Should be a button.
Not on my screens.
Okay. Well, that was it. It was Jacob had a question about HQ and what IWA is. That's about it. So they were answered in the chat.
Like HQ, like OneDB, and since I'm just playing with it, I'm trying to improve on the scripts I published on IIUG years ago, the Pro scripts. So I won't have any use for, I'm afraid, for IWA right now. I won't be able to walk into an interview saying I know IWA. Very sad.
I don't think there's a development version of IWA or freebie version out there anyway, but I wouldn't swear to that. It's not.
There was an advanced development edition at some point, but you had to download it through sales.
Yeah, plus the fact, like I said, my understanding is Informix is IWA, OneDB will be this Actin Avalanche product. But again, that's my understanding as opposed to it's a fact.
Anybody else want to unmute and ask questions?
Just a couple of things, Art and Paul. So the commands are all on something still, are they?
Yeah, I haven't found one that isn't. So you still start the engine with an OnInit. You still got all your on stats, etc., etc.
That's probably why they called it OneDB. Then ON stood for one.
Well, yeah. See, I always think they should have stuck it as one. I loved that when we had version 2, which you got at the moment. I could turn around and say there's only one DB2, and I think that's a fantastic tagline. But I can see why IBM probably didn't like it. But no, all the commands are the same. I haven't found any that are different. I haven't found, as long as you're on comparable releases, I haven't found any options that are different, etc., etc.
I don't know if it's just a licensing thing, but I've heard people talk about IBM Informix and HCL Informix, and I don't think they're talking about OneDB.
Correct. No, there is an HCL Informix.
Can you explain for everyone on the call what the difference is?
Sure. It's primarily lockstep with the IBM release of Informix. So 1410 FC10 is the same HCL or IBM. Just the licensing is different. OneDB has features in it that IBM hasn't asked for or didn't want. And that will continue forward, which is why Paul said it's OneDB version 3 is going to be a superset of Informix because there will be features in there that IBM hasn't asked for.
Yeah, my understanding is the OneDB code stream and the IBM Informix, HCL Informix code streams are different. My understanding is with OneDB 3 and Informix 15.10, it will be the same code stream. So maybe thinking it more along the lines of back in the day when we had version 7 and version 9, there were different code streams and they were merged at some point in 10 or whatever, whenever it was. Again, my understanding, not stating that as a fact.
Yeah.
Just explain more how Action fits in with this.
I don't actually have a strong knowledge of that. Action was, again, if you go on, Action was the ingress of old, as far as I'm aware. So basically, you know, if we go back far enough, we all come from the same set of people, basically. So Action is now a rebranded, for want of a better term, ingress database.
Yeah, and I think the name is managing OneDB as far as the salespeople, et cetera. But
Yeah,
support and development is exactly the same as it was. It's the Informix people.
So Action are involved in OneDB, not HCL Informix.
Yes.
Honestly, I can't answer that, Doug. I don't know.
Just posted another question there. Which
Yeah,
sees, but
yeah, Jay,
yeah.
your scripts are the same. Sysmaster is the same, with the caveat that it's going to be a version. It might be a version behind on some things. Like FC8 and later has a couple of extra read ahead tables that I don't think are in the latest OneDB, but they probably will be in version 3.
The important thing was the tables that do access, the views that do access, will still be there.
They're the same.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you've got the same issue as you would have jumping within an Informix arena. That no, some things physically aren't there because they're not in that version. OneDB 3, IDS 15 should be 100% compatible. Plus bits.
Plus
all the back end stuff should be the same. It's the same code stream, like I keep saying. In my understanding.
Yep. So the difference is, it was starting with version 3. The difference will be minor. Like I believe that OneDB is going to be supporting the latest .NET, and Informix is not. Things like that, little things like that.
It sounds like the thing that's most different is the equivalent to Informix HQ. Which do you think is better?
Well, I've never really used Informix HQ.
Nor I.
The reason being, I would say the vast majority of sites I work on, things like that just don't exist. So I'm very much, unfortunately, down at the green screen. However, I'm currently working on some OneDB stuff, and I'm having to learn and use OneDB Explorer. So I'm not saying it's better or worse than Informix HQ, but I actually do quite like it. So if I were going to integrate monitoring, I'd be comfortable using either product, but I tend to throw monitoring into an Informix time series based database and then use things like Grafana. I don't understand why we've got a proprietary time series database built into Informix HQ and and OneDB Explorer when we've got a very, very good time series database already in the damned engine.
All right, we've got a couple of new questions. When you guys are done.
Sorry, just a quickie before we leave that, the data it inserts into the Informix HQ repository, it's not actually time series, it's JSON data.
Okay, well, I remember it being a presentation and I was pulling up somebody about that, and they said, no, it's a proprietary time series database, because we've been told for years that if you want a deep embedded database, the only thing you should consider using is Informix. And then they released Informix HQ, and they definitely don't believe their own marketing. It really got me really riled.
The data does get put, anything you record does go into an Informix database. The only thing that's in the HT database is just the configuration, really.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, it's time series based data. It should be in a time series data blade because that's what sales and marketing told us our entire lives, going back to before 2000. So yeah. Sorry, that's one of my little soapboxes.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the questions, we have another question, a comment from Amolfo that he was able to connect Power BI to OneDB and it worked perfectly, no problems.
I'd agree.
Yeah, Henry, you can go to the HCL website and navigate pretty easily to the download site for OneDB. You'll just have to apply for a test license.
If you have any problems getting a license, just reach out to me.
Yep. And Brian Hughes, one of our lovely Informix OneDB developers, says another difference for OneDB, yes, is that OneDB will be cloud agnostic and work with Kubernetes, where Informix only works with IBM's Kubernetes deployments. Okay, Brian, you wanna elucidate?
Yeah, do I come through okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So for IBM Informix, there is the Informix Cloud offering, which is Cloud Pak for data. And for Informix customers, that's completely fine to go through if you're using IBM and use that solution to do a Kubernetes deployment. And for anyone not super familiar with Kubernetes, it's basically a way for using software to automatically manage the installation, the upgrades, the if anything goes down, it brings it back up, and it does all this nice cloud stuff. OneDB has taken a different approach because we're not tied to the IBM piece. We have a more cloud agnostic, so we deploy Helm charts and Docker containers that you can take to any private or public cloud to deploy and use that. So if you have Kubernetes, you might have an interest in the IBM way if you're using Cloud Pak for data anyway, or you might be interested in a OneDB one if you want to take it to your cloud provider of choice.
Okay. And also, I think, Brian, my understanding is there's more easily available OneDB installations on the various cloud systems that you can subscribe to.
If you're talking about something like the like AWS virtualized images for VMs, yes, I think we have one more cloud provider than Informix, but don't quote me on that because I'm only that's a different person, different team doing it. But yeah, we at least match what you can get on Informix, and I thought we added one additional cloud provider for VM-based stuff for OneDB.
Gotcha. Thank you. Jacob asks if you can use one SQL host file for both OneDB and Informix. I assume if you have both instances, and the answer is yes. You just have to set Informix SQL hosts and OneDB _ SQL hosts to the same path.
Yeah, I mean it's
clients will use it for both.
Yeah, it's the same as using any multiple instance. You've got the same set of rules apply.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, it's important for me to know that because my name is in the hopper for a job. I think was going to be under Action for a migration somewhere. So yeah, it's pretty important.
Sure.
Yeah, it's the same file. So
beautiful. I needed to know that. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Well, Lester's just appeared. Is he going to cause trouble? Well, my contact details in the bottom of the screen there. If you've got any other questions, just reach out and ask me. Like I said before, I'm always happy to take calls or emails. So I think we call this a wrap.
All right.
Thanks for everybody's time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye, folks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.